Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing?
So, this is going to be very odd for me tonight because about 3 hours ago, my tooth I had was numbed because I needed to get a filling. And so it has faded. It wasn't as bad as it was, but I still, as I'm talking right now, I'm slurring my words a bit more because I'm still trying to get
I have a horrible feeling in my mouth. Yeah.
That's what I was like, can we do later tonight? I don't know. This is so funny. Have get that done, but yeah. So I'm doing good.
That's good. Yeah, I'm hanging in there. It's just it's been one big long week, but I'm here, and I'm not quarantined, so that's good.
Yeah, that's the beauty of podcasting. Even if we do get quarantined, we can still do this theoretically.
Exactly. I mean, wow. It just seems like in the last 24 hours or so in the world of entertainment, sports, everything, things just went from like 0 to 60. And because, first we got the word about Falcon and Winter Solider having to halt their production in Prague yesterday. And then, and now we learned Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson has coronavirus. Right. I mean, it's just amazing, and everything between. I mean, between a basketball player, I guess, tested positive, so the NBA suspended their season. March Madness is now going to be played at empty arenas. I mean, it's just wild.
Yeah, it's a lot, and reactions are very interesting. I think to something that you were saying during the pre-show, we're used to disasters and we're used to things. I mean, that's your bread and butter, but at the same time, something at this level, in this case, this is like a movie all of a sudden.
Yeah, it is.
And we're just like, where's the damn monkey? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Where's that monkey? We can just, kill it, or get the sample that we need so we can create an antidote and be done with this, all in 2 hours instead of this unknowing, time. But it's interesting times that we're.
It is so bizarre. I mean, it's not even bizarre. It's just fascinating how it's escalated and everything is being affected to the point where my parents are coming over and I'm like, you need to bring your own toilet paper because apparently
everybody's buying. Yeah, in the lower 48, you probably can't find toilet paper in the store. I know I couldn't Sunday night. It was the craziest thing. I was just doing my normal weekly shop.
I was after work and I was just like, let me grab one of these last because I'm already running low. So let me make sure I can get some extra. But people are fascinating. And it's not, I don't know. I don't want to encourage it. And we definitely want to move on this subject because it's already taking up too much of our life. Yeah. So on that note, this weekend I saw 2 movies. I saw Code 8.
Also known as Sarah Missing Stephen ML.
No. So it was 99 cents.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's just be real, yo. I'm cheap. So, this movie. It was bizarre watching it because I could see what they wanted to do and then what they could just do based on the money that was generated through the crowdfunding or whatever they did. Because when you look at it, the story, you're like, yeah, that's a good draft. It also, the ending just bothers me because it ends in this most awkward way where clearly they want to set up a sequel, but they don't really do it. And it's just, there's no completedness about it. There's nothing that comes full circle. It's like, oh yeah, and this is what happens to these characters. You're like, oh, so what was the point of this? What? It was odd. Can you name the second movie I saw?
Second movie you saw. Did you finally watch Parasite?
Oh my God. And no, I did not tell Will, but I did watch Parasite. I did.
Honestly, folks, she did not tell me that at all. No DM about it or message or anything about it. I just, yeah, that's an honest to God guess.
Intuition.
Yeah.
So,
we've been doing it. Yeah. How'd you like it?
I think that I took enough time between all the award shows and everybody gloating about this movie and saying it's the best thing ever, and also hearing people who watch it and is like, I don't get it. I had enough of that to go into it feeling very neutral. Like I didn't have high expectations. I didn't have low expectations. I really liked it.
Yeah.
I get it. I totally get it. I get why it won all those awards. There now, initially, the first hour and a half, you will not get it, and then there is a turn, and then it's just like watching a slow motion car accident, and you're like, oh, okay, so here we go. This is the real movie. And I think maybe that's part of the problem, is that there's a good half where you're just like, it's beat for beat storytelling, you know exactly what's going to happen, and then there's this one turn and suddenly everything goes into a direction and you're like, damn. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I it's on my list, and I've been meaning to watch it, but I haven't, obviously. But that's if you liked it, then I have a feeling I will too. But I can't wait to check it out. That and the other Oscar nominee that I still want to check out is Jojo Rabbit. But those.
Yeah,
I think,
that's on the list. That's on the list. There's a few others. I'm just waiting. I just noticed that Parasite was finally at $2.99 to rent.
That's good to know. That's good to know. I'll be doing that this weekend.
No. Oh, I liked it. I hope other people check it out, because it is something to watch it, and it's just good storytelling overall. I mean, we're so used to these spectacle films and even spectacle TV shows. I think that's why everyone goes nuts about Succession, is because there is nothing, there's no spectacularness, you know, there's no big action moments. It's just about a family who have so many problems, like with their own identities and with who they are as a family, and that you just love that drama. And I think Parasite does that as well, as where it looks at a family and fleshes out the characters, and the characters bring the action, or that kind of like hook into why you would just watch people living life and making crappy decisions.
I think you're right about that. There is a lot of spectacle television to go along with spectacle movies, so it is refreshing, I think, sometimes, where you can just really have a show that just really focuses on just storytelling and those just, you know, very low tech but very deep drama beats.
Yeah, which brings us into our slate of shows. Which is all spectacle. So
there's some spectacle and some, like, you know, reflection, I guess.
Are you referring to The Flash with that reflective note?
Yeah, actually I am. Okay. But also it had its moments of spectacle as well.
Okay. All right. So I have a feeling based on that we're going to disagree. I was so freaking bored by this episode of this.
Really? This was the one show this week where I actually from start to finish, I was completely engaged. I have not been that way with The Flash in a long time, where I was not distracted while I was watching the episode.
Yeah, I complete opposite. And maybe it's because I literally watched it an hour or two ago.
Okay.
And I'm drugged up I don't know.
I think maybe it's the drugs.
But there was something about it where I just felt like exposition. What is this episode trying to do? Exposition. It felt, it wasn't the pacing. It was more that by now the Flash has had so many seasons, and the formula of the episode has a villain. The villain carries through the through line. In this episode, we were introduced to the villain right away. And then Cisco comes back and claims that he's been tracking this villain this whole time. And I'm like, what is this? Where is this coming from? Cisco, who are you? And Cisco asked the same question. And then they tie it together at the end, and it just felt like they wanted it to be they had two writers write two separate scripts, and then they decided to make one episode. That is what I watched.
So first, I hear you. I could see how you would feel that way about the episode. What I really liked about the episode was it got to the zen of the Speed Force, and also I really liked how they had integrated Wally back into the story, because I know this is, again, it's an adaptation and stuff, but Wally does in the comic of Crisis, he does and Jay Garrick both have a role, and they obviously did not have one in the television version of Crisis. So, and he's been gone away for a long time. He went over to Legends of Tomorrow for a bit, and the last we heard, he was off in a monastery somewhere, and then they bring that back, and he's very zen. And I think the thing I liked about the episode was how they, without eclipsing Barry, they showed how, in some regards, and just the same way with the comic, how Wally actually exceeded Barry in his capabilities and knowledge of the Speed Force.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. So I think for me, as someone who has read the comics and seeing how they adapted certain elements of Barry and Wally's story into this episode, I really, really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed how they used Wally, and I know part of the reason why Keenan left was Lonsdale left. I mean, he was on his own voyage of self-discovery and stuff, but they used his own personal story and integrated it into the story of the show. And and to me, it really worked, and it gave that character purpose, which by the time he left the show, he really didn't have much of one.
See, I hear you, and this really is going to boil down to strictly TV watcher, and then TV and comic book watcher, reader, whatever.
Yeah.
Enthusiast. Because what I think about in this episode is the fact that last season with Nora, Barry demonstrated such amount of maturity, and also just legacy and ownership of his actions. And you know what? I think at the end of the day, this is what this season has been lacking, where they almost peaked his character growth and then decided they had to take it all back. And this episode is probably why I felt that more than any of the other episodes in the season, because even in that line where Barry's like, "Hey, Kid Flash," there's a weird stutter, I swear to God, where even it felt awkward to call Wally that rather than just, "Hey, Flash," because the kid, like he's an adult.
Yeah, he is.
It's weird to call him a kid. Yeah. And then they do this, and there's such a lack of maturity in Barry in this episode, and maybe maturity is not the right word in terms of this episode. There's just something stunted about it, where I feel like we got a version of Barry, maybe season 3, season 4, when last year it was Dad Barry. So
Right.
we know he's grown beyond this, and we understand that he realizes how much he sacrificed during Crisis. Everything but his actual life.
But in a way, he did sacrifice his life because of introducing the chain of lightning into the Speed Force
unknowingly. Which begs the question: well, if he had known, would he have made a different decision?
Oh, I saw your note about that prior when I was getting ready for tonight, and my initial thought was yes, he would have, because that's Barry Allen
this season,
yeah. Well, I mean, that's Barry too. I mean, I think Wally, whenever he and Barry had their argument in Barry's lab, really Barry does still takes the universe and on his shoulders. And so knowing what he knows now, and basically because of the sacrifice of losing the Speed Force in order to allow Spectre to bring back a new universe and a combined universe, he would have made that choice, because he is that selfless. And even though he would have lost, he would have lost, he doesn't lose his life literally, but his life as the Flash would end.
Right. And that's another thing that I got a lot from this episode, is that I really am curious about where this is going, because it almost feels like set up for the actual end of this series.
I think it is setting up. Well, I think you're right. I think if they do, they're all signed for 7 seasons. Knowing, and again, like you said, this is where comic book reader / watcher gets one thing out of it versus someone that's not as familiar with the newer material in the comic books. They really, by introducing the Speed Force and the construct of various forces, which has been one of the things that's been a theme in the comics recently. They've had a whole arc about different extra dimensional forces that play in the universe. I could see where they are building towards an ending to the series by introducing all these various things, and like the Turtle 2. I mean, that's one of the powers that manifests itself in the comic recently. It wasn't a Turtle 2, but it was definitely there. And we've seen, I've mentioned before on the podcast how we've seen how Eric Wallace, the current showrunner, has been integrating more of the modern stories into the show, and even last season with the Negative Speed Force with Thawne. I mean, those are all new things that have been developed in the comic recently. So I could see how they're building towards that. And it wouldn't surprise me if, like, when we get to Comic-Con next year, assuming it's held this year, when they come back in the fall, this is the last season of The Flash.
Yeah. So Barry's version of, or his new constructed Speed Force will be called Positive Force, correct?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, and again, that's actually based in the comic when they had a Justice League of America Avenger crossover, and he couldn't access the Speed Force in that crossover, so he actually built a Speed Force battery. Yeah,
and it was AAA positive.
Exactly.
Jesus. So the one saving grace is that Tom Cavanaugh plays Eobard Thawne the best way. Mm-hmm. I do have to say, when they locked him up and he was spouting his hate towards Barry and Cisco, I really like that scene.
Yeah, I did too.
That it's just the drama and the the fear and the realization of this long chess match that these two have been playing. Now, I do have to admit, part of me immediately was thinking, God, Eobard, again, why do you hate him so much? what is happening? I've lost this thread. What is... I know there's a history here, but still, I really boiled that down. But I do like that. I like how they've Nash is the exorcism of Nash. I think that's what they're calling next week's episode, and I'm looking forward to that. Mm-hmm. So even though I did not really overall enjoy this episode, and I definitely have some severe issues with it, I did like the ending.
Yeah, the ending was amazing. I mean, when I was just like cheering, we call, obviously it was pretty obvious early on in 6B that was indeed Vaughn, but just to call back to season 1 with the hand through the heart. I mean, just Cisco. I mean, that was when I was just like, oh crap, I don't want Cisco to go, even though I feel like they are working, maybe transition him out. But when they had, those things in the pipeline, you're right. That's what made this show so popular. That chess match, as you just put it perfectly, between Barry and Thawne, and whenever they are on the screen together, that's good stuff.
So let's talk about Batwoman.
Yeah, that was my second favorite show of the week.
They also had a really good ending scene.
Mm-hmm.
It was the episode. It's pretty consistent with everything else we've been getting, especially since post-crisis. Villain of the week. I like how they tied it into Campbell, not necessarily even Alice, but it was more had to do with Campbell and his craziness. So they're really, and we were worried about this. Like, I remember conversations about how long can Alice work as a villain, and she is a villain, but they've brought in Campbell and he's taking over, and that was really consistent in this episode, given the history between Dr. Ethan Campbell and the Princess Joker wannabe.
Yeah, Joker's daughter, I think.
Joker's daughter, which I did have some issue with. I was like, "Come on, guys, you can do better than this." What I really liked about this episode is that they made a very interesting decision with Mary, where we knew Mary knows. She knows the secret. Mm-hmm. And you see her questioning Sophie in the beginning and trying to get assess if she realizes who Batwoman is. And then they bring in Alice again for another great Alice and Mary, which I'm finding the scenes between those two actresses are always good.
They are.
They really do. And they've really come a long way with that dynamic and relationship, because it is very much the evil stepsister kind of deal. Yeah. Literally. But to twist that knife, because Alice has always known who Batwoman is. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, right, Mary, instead of saying, "Hey, I know, stop lying to me," she brings up the pilot episode, and I never thought about that.
That's right. Oh, I didn't think about it till you just brought it up. You're right.
Yeah. All that trust she put into Kate with her clinic, and how like she's more than what she seems. They brought that full circle and used it in such a way where Kate's face at the end of it, that recognition that maybe she is keeping Mary out for the wrong reasons. I mean, Kate, you go to Mary every single episode.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that dynamic too, and like especially like how Mary was trying to like, hey, kind of just like, you need you need a sidekick, you need a sidekick.
Yeah.
Yeah. and they were just, it was like faint and repose as far as like their little conversation, and ultimately, it definitely set up, like you said, those good callbacks to the pilot because obviously Mary knows Kate's secret, but also I think about also in the episode we were speculating about, or I speculated about whether or not Sophie realized that it was Kate under the cowl, and this episode pretty much confirms that she still thinks it's the other person, that she doesn't know that Kate is Batwoman, and so Kate was successful in throwing her off the path, even though now Sophie has fallen in love with the ideal of Batwoman.
Well,
rather than a person of her.
Yeah, let's talk about this. Because, still don't remember them kissing, but clearly it happened.
Yeah, and it happened again. Yeah. Happened again.
It didn't happen again, which is fine. Now, a part of me wants to say this episode makes Sophie look really stupid. And it kind of does. Because, come on, girl. They had the long relationship. They kissed multiple times during that relationship. Are you telling me just because she suddenly wears a mask, she kisses differently?
Yeah,
there's such a connection, or the writers want us to think that there's such this soulmated connection between these two characters that I find it hard, the closer Sophie or the more around Batwoman she is, that she doesn't recognize her for being Kate.
Yeah, I get that. It was that was part of the episode that did frustrate me as well. It's like, come on.
Yeah, it's like the episode with Mary where you're just like, Mary, come on, connect the dots. But then they allowed her to connect the dots, and I'm just waiting for them to do the same thing with Sophie. That being said, the rest of the episode, when it really came down to this potential relationship with Batwoman and her abandoning the crows because of what she believes in, that allowed her to have the courage to actually come out to her mom, which is a really good scene. Very well acted. And so I can't, it's like Sophie comes out even for me.
Yeah. She does. And I was just thinking, I think this episode, really combined all the best things about the Arrowverse shows, as far as, this being true to yourself, and, as far as her coming out to her mother, as far as getting back to the villain, the whole issues with, to have a villain of the week with some depth, with issues of body image and social media addiction, and I think about Arrow as far as the crows being judge, jury, and executioner, especially with Jacob learning that Reggie was indeed an innocent man, set up to take the fall for Lucius Fox's murder, and the crows may have been behind it in some or part of the conspiracy that led to Fox's death. So, those were all things that I really, like I said, made this episode this week one of my favorites of the slate.
Yeah, there were so many callbacks. There was a lot of times where I was like, yeah, they planted that seed a few episodes ago. I totally know why they're bringing it up now, and they're utilizing it in a way where I'm also not being like, oh, now they bring up this point. It's not smeared where I'm just like saying, okay, this character will now say this in response.
Right.
But then again, it's a new show, so we don't have seasons upon seasons of watching characters repeat the same mistakes. But overall, it's a pretty good episode of TV. I was perfectly satisfied with it. Which makes me want to circle back to Sophie.
Yeah.
Because that moment at the end, And I don't know if other like Batman movies or TV shows have ever brought that aspect up, is that at the end of the day they keep their identities a secret, not because of the whole I want to protect you, but because it makes is suddenly you're not that symbol.
Right.
You're the actual person.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of baggage with being a human. So you have to be something else.
Yeah, that was a very that was a good callback to actually Batman Begins.
Okay.
When you think about it, when Bruce is on the airplane flying back after being from training, as a person, Bruce Wayne can be corrupted, but as a symbol, I can be something else.
Right. Which goes back to what we're talking about the last time we were reviewing Batwoman, is that they're taking that mythos and highlighting all of its strengths without making it feel repetitious.
Exactly.
Which brings us to Supergirl. No.
Yeah, you're going to have to carry Supergirl this week because I just couldn't get through it. I did, but this is where, I was saying earlier with the Flash, I was like glued. Supergirl, I was all over the place as far as like my attention span with this one this week. I liked the beginning. I will say I did like the beginning with the dragon.
No, Will, no. It just was. Okay.
We can move on to Black Lightning.
Supergirl happened this episode. There were things there. It was not. I have to agree. I would rank the Flash episode above Supergirl this week because I honestly can't remember one ththing that happened. Any relevance.
There were like pieces of it. Like, for example, I am really enjoying John Cryer's Lex Luthor, and I like the way he's playing the character, that he's just not megalomania evil, but it's bringing some nuance to it where he's like benevolent guy. He's trying to work Lena to we can help these inmates and get over whatever to recondition them. So there's those moments, but I don't know if it's because I didn't watch portions of 5A that some of these characters I just don't know them as well, and so maybe that's that. Like this is the Andrea character, and the whole Obsidian company and those kind of things. I will freely admit I am not as well versed in it this season as I was as we were last season. Mm-hmm. So there's that. But I don't know. It's just this season for me. It's just not working for me. Other than there's parts of it that works for me as far as like Lex. And as far as Alex leaving the DEO and becoming a partner with John and being the PI work, those are some nice moments. But I just felt that overall the episode just kind of meandered along, and that's just how this season has been to me. It's just kind of meandering along.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that Supergirl is in this weird flux of. Right now, some episodes I'm fully engaged in. Episodes like this, I could care less about. I don't even remember, and they don't stand out. And it's definitely, and we say this every week. It's not the season that was before. There was something about that season that was very magical, and they have yet to recapture it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I am glad that since Crisis, I did return to it because I still like these characters. I still am fine with where things are going. If they have a few more of these episodes run, I might jump off again. I don't know yet. Granted, all TV is going to be canceled in the near future, so we take what we can get.
Yeah. I mean, I guess especially given the 100th episode to me was a really solid 100.
Yep.
And so this week was kind of but I am looking forward to next week with the Dreamer centric story, because I really do like that character.
Yeah, and they haven't been using her as much, so we'll see. It's still hit and miss, but let's talk about your favorite hit, and it's finally, I can say this, and
You
I
can
won't
say it.
talk. Season finale of Black.
Yes, it was season finale, and it was, as far as Flash was my favorite episode this week. Black Lightning finale and Batwoman are tied for number 2, because it was a very solid season finale. I mean, it tied up various story points from the first 3 seasons with the Markovian War. It had stakes, which we, especially now that you can't have doppelgangers anymore. We lost characters in this episode. We have characters who, we have a cliffhanger with Grace Troi being in a coma after Gravedigger had Anissa and Grace fight each other in the pit where they were trying to rescue all the metas from Gravedigger. The other really cool thing was it put Earth Prime in real world context, where there was a scene after Gravedigger captured Jennifer after a pretty amazing fight between Jefferson and Gravedigger, where Jefferson told him, "Hey, you're my uncle," and he's like, "Oh, so we are family." And Wayne Brady's he just chews the scenery as a bad guy, but there was a moment where Jennifer and Gravedigger did have a moment together where they referenced Obama and Martin Luther King. And so in this Earth Prime, one of the things we always liked about Black Lightning was how it kind of grounded itself in current reality, and that was just a nice little nod to it, and especially in the context of their discussion about racial injustice and everything, as far as how Gravedigger was used by the country, and so it was just a really good scene, especially using those 2 icons like that. Also, as I mentioned, Dr. Jason was killed. Lynn was almost killed, but by one of the ASA metas, but she turns out she's still addicted to green light, and that's another cliffhanger that they sort of teased for season 4.
That goes back to what you keep saying about how that portrayal was so authentic of people getting hooked on these things. Mm-hmm. If they had chosen to just be like, yeah, and Lynn suddenly is over it, it's like, wait, she was an addict. Right. You don't get over something like that.
Right.
I mean, that has to be continued forward.
They definitely did so, but they also, put the ASA chapter to a close with there was at the end of the episode, there was a hearing where Jefferson did expose the ASA's plan to build all these metas, and we get a nice little cliffhanger, couple cliffhangers, big one, where we about Gravedigger, and also they had a couple nice Easter eggs too in that scene where they had the creators of the comic book Black Lightning as part of the congressional hearing panel. So it was this very solid season finale. Can't wait for season 4. And we end it with Tobias in Markovia just waiting to come back and take over Friedland.
Well,
yeah, and there were a few other moments too. There was Khalil and got his, as part of the ASA getting shut down, Agent Odell is held responsible for his actions, and there was a nice moment where Khalil and Black Lightning had Jefferson was like, "Look, Khalil, you don't need to do this. You're better than killing Odell," and they had those moments, moments of conscious And Khalil was like, okay, he did the right thing. So it was just, as I said, very strong episode. We lost Detective Henderson, Chief Henderson. We lost Dr. Jace, but Grace in a coma. But again, there's some, definite cliffhangers with Lynn and Tobias and Gravedigger that they really have some strong off points to jump off of for season 4.
Good. I mean, it sounds like it lived up to everything else you've been saying about season 3 of Black Lightning.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's all you can ask for season finales.
Yeah.
I think we were talking about that last week, about how they tend to get structured in this way, and sometimes if you deviate from the structure, then good luck.
Yeah. They this is one that definitely stuck the landing.
Good. All right. And brings us to, and speaking of landings, I guess, Picard, which had a very, I was going to say flashback, but it's not flashback. Picard lands in a place where to find some shelter for him and Soji, and I see familiar faces who are aged about 30 years.
Yep.
But I was like, I recognize that face, and I recognize that face, and yep, because Deanna, Troi, and Will Riker are, we saw them this episode, and there was a mini family reunion happening.
Yeah.
Why are you enthusiastic about this?
Huh?
You just very like, let's talk.
No, I'm very enthusiastic about it. I love this episode. It was like how you properly do fan service and carry a story forward instead of just having nostalgia for nostalgia's sake.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and just, I mean, there's just so many things about it. Because, like, one, just the title and the name of the episode and the name of the planet they go to, Nepenthe, which is, from the Odyssey, from Homer, and it's a drug that helps you forget your sorrows. And there's been a theme of sorrow in, with Soji's story and her sister. But also, we see what the Rikers have been and Troy's been dealing with. I mean, they lost their son, and they named their daughter after Deanna's sister who died when Deanna was young. So it was and Riker's history is, as far as their son Thad, how it connects to the overall story that's going on in the Federation at this point, because they could have cured their son if the Federation hadn't banned sense. Yeah.
I think that, to go back to your point, this is how you do fan service without diverting from the current story you're telling. That one scene, like, before I was very leery, and I was like, okay, all right, so what? So either there's going to be a family dinner and then shots are going to get fired. Is that little girl going to die?
Yeah.
How is this going to blow up in Picard's face? But then, to go back to that scene between Soji and Deanna, it's just, they needed to bring her in, and Will arguably also in, just so that Soji, as she is coming to terms with her new reality, she has someone else other than Picard and his arrogance to realize what she is now and what that means. And I think she needed that maternal instinct, and she needed that empathy in that moment. And that realization is that, yes, there are so many people out there that think you're evil and you should have never been made, but there is a reason why you were, and why people still continue to make sense or want to make sense. I mean, it's science, right?
Right.
So So I thank you for bringing that up, because that really is the moment where I was like, okay, I'm fully on board with this episode.
Yeah, that without that moment, it would have just been very hollow fan service that would have frustrated everyone, because fans would have been like, how dare you let Riker lecture to Picard about being arrogant? But but it's true. I mean, and we talked about this earlier in the season. Picard is a very arrogant man, and who better to tell you that than your best friend,
right?
Who coming from Rafi or coming from Rios or somebody else, it wouldn't be the same as hearing it from Riker and hearing it again from Troi, who Troy's always played that role of the sort of the captain's conscience. Mm-hmm. But in this episode, I mean, she was just like, oh yeah, I'm your counselor. I'm going to, but also I'm going to tell you how it is. And Riker, too, was like, Jean-Luc, I'm going to tell you how it is. And so it was, that was a very realistic dynamic between people who've known each other for 30 years, who's been through stuff together.
Right.
So, yeah.
And to go to your point, I mean, the whole conscious aspect is what we've been missing for this season, where Picard put together his team and then launched himself into space and is on this mission. And he's really had to be that reflection pool for these new crew members on why he needs them for a self-serving reason, but also trying to figure out a motive that allows him to find Soji and take her where she needs to go. So I think that he has really been missing that right-hand man or woman to say, like, hey, are you sure about this? Like,
yeah.
What do you think is going to happen?
Exactly.
What is the overall plan? What is the end goal? I mean, Soji is a Sith. She's always going to be on the run for her life, especially with people like Nordak chasing her, which that's another reason why I was first trepidatious about this episode, is because Nordak just sat in the ship the whole time, spinning his cube.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. He had me last episode, and then you like benched him.
Yeah. There's this little warp speed cat and mouse. I mean, that's pretty much what was going on between Norak and Rios. But it was okay. It was a nice, I guess. You needed the action to counterbalance the moments with the Rikers and Troi and Picard. So it was okay. I mean, I guess you could have had that. You did have the action go down on the cube, which was another. We lost. Speaking of losing characters and stuff, we lost Hugh this week, and
have to kill them.
Yeah, and which was and of course that's sort of the storytelling arc. Last week he helped save the day, and then of course you meet your demise later. But again, I thought this 4 characters' death, that it was necessary for the story.
They almost tried to kill him or make it appear that he had died about 3 or 4 times between last week's episode and this week's episode.
Yeah.
which I know where you're going with, like, how it's going to overall serve the storyline. That being said, writers, that's a huge mistake, because by the time that you actually do kill the character, suddenly the stakes have dropped, because we're like, we went through our grief over that character 4 death scenes ago.
Exactly. Yeah. Whenever they murder all the XBs, and then he was still standing there, I was like, oh, lazy writing.
I know. It's just so weird.
Yeah. That was the one flaw of the episode. I will freely admit. But
what about your thoughts on Agnes? Because they opened up with her before, or in this, it was kind of an awkward timing of how they alluded that this occurred. Picard had already come forward, and she started interacting with him.
Right.
And then who does she encounter?
Commander O. So, and I had made a note in prior weeks to talk about it, and didn't get a chance to really flesh it out. But so I've been just wondering since we first saw that scene with O and Agnes at the Daystrom Institute, if she was Romulan or Vulcan. Because just getting Star Trek geek lore here, Vulcans don't need sunglasses because they grew up. I mean, Vulcan is a desert planet, and they genetically developed, inner eyelid to protect them from the harsh sun.
Yeah.
So I was like, why is she wearing sunglasses? But yeah. And so I was like, okay, is that their way of trying to throw you off to say, oh, maybe she's a Romulan and not Vulcan? But then this week they have her do the mind meld after to basically plant the seed in Agnes's head that Daystrom, that Maddox is not all what he seems, and his plan to make more sense is going to lead to the end of the world.
Well, it's the destroyer. I mean, Energy's part of that prophecy too, is that if she's the sister who's the destroyer, then there's something, and Picard is gonna be the trigger basically, because she's gonna go and see Maddox, and then something might happen if she is that sister and not the other one. Right.
Yeah, so there's that piece, and so so that so timeline wise, that was right before they left to go to Earth. I mean, they left Earth, and so I still so I'm still maybe back to the place where I think she might be a Romulan who's learned how to do those mind techniques, but because again, the Vought Zath, the deep state intelligence unit is just their goal is to keep to keep sense from being built. So or there's just offshoot of Vulcans who feel that way too, because like you said, because they are the destroyer, and that was, if they let these things propagate, they're going to destroy us all, which what happened what did happen on Mars for some reason. So there so there was that piece, but I like the way that they did, have her take the tracking device and really carrying it forward to the present moment of the story. Really, last week she hooked up at Rios and I guess about a grief sex, and then this week she's really dealing with the aftermath and coming to grips with how she was manipulated to be a pawn for these actors, and then she takes method to self-induces herself into a coma to help them get away from the tracking device. So I did like that aspect of it. It just added another layer to Agnes's character, as far as her feeling responsible and really, we've been seeing the guilt play out the last few weeks, and now we have the consequence of it.
Right, and Agnes is an onion. There's multi-layers, and she's someone that they're still fleshing out, and they needed something to be happening on the ship, and a reason why there would be a delay, between them being able to immediately meet up with Soji and Picard. And they came up with a pretty good reason for that delay occurring, and for Picard to reconnect with his old friends. So, I mean, overall, there were some parts, mainly on the cube, which was lazy writing, but majority of this episode was pretty strong. Not as strong as last week. Last week's still my favorite episode of the season. Pilot right after that. But again, there were a few episodes there where I was like, okay, stop meandering. Let's get to it. And I'm glad we're on this path now, because I really feel like now we are on this mission. Everything's in place, and we're headed somewhere. And so I hope that they stick the landing just like Black Lightning did.
I hope so. I really hope so. I mean, I think they will. I'm hopeful that they will. And again, this week was just I as a long time Star Trek fan, this was a very, very satisfying episode for me. Great seeing Jonathan Frakes, who hasn't acted in forever because he's moved on to have such a strong, tremendous career as a director.
Mm-hmm.
And he was even worried about that because he's like, I haven't been in front of the camera in years, but he just stepped right back into that character, and felt like didn't miss a beat. And I loved how he did the analysis of Picard when he was calling out the air. You couldn't see that about Soji, that she was an android. I mean, those are the moments that I really liked about that episode. And again with Troi, her scenes with Picard and helping him see what Soji needed. Those were definitely strong moments for me, and I'm glad that they worked them into the story, because they were going to be like the big three for the next generation group, even though eventually became Picard, Data, and Worf. But this was the original intent, and it was nice seeing that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will M. Polk. That's WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at SNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. But most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.